planet Earth was like Middle Earth. We shared our world with many others, much like us. Each one a different kind of walking, thinking ape. But now, Homo sapiens is all alone. We evolved during the most volatile era since the extinction of the dinosaurs. Only our species lived to settle every corner of the planet. My name is Niobe Thompson. I'm an anthropologist. I want to know how we survived and why we're the last ape standing. Come on a journey back in time and around the planet to discover the miracle of our species. Millions of years after the human journey began, something remarkable happened: the birth of Homo sapiens. A new kind of ape, one that could remember its past and imagine its future. Remake the world to suit its needs and settle the entire planet. We thrive in heat, an Arctic cold, in deserts and on water. We're a species with no ecological niche. We make our own ecologies.
In other words, our species has the unique ability to live almost anywhere, any climate, any temperature. One species everywhere. That's astonishing. But that's not how our story began. Far from it.
In the beginning, Africa was our only home. We call this place the cradle of humanity. I've always thought that meant we evolved in a generous world, bursting with life. Our original Eden. Scientists once believed this world was an unchanging, eternal savanna. Sometimes a dangerous place, but a predictable one. A landscape we could count on. But what if Africa was never so kind? What if we were driven nearly to extinction before we could become fully human? We're now discovering, as we evolved in Africa, our ancestors were locked in a deadly struggle for survival. Over millions of years, most of the large animals around us went extinct. Our own close relatives were no exception. For most of our past, we were just one of many different hominids, all experiments in being human, and all now gone. Only we survived. Nature chose Homo sapiens. I want to know why we are the only ones left. What makes us so special? A clue may lie in one of the harshest places in Africa, the Kalahari, the home of the Khoisan.
The Khoisan, or Bushmen, are the most ancient genetic lineage we know of. Their ancestors split with other humans before we left Africa, and they've remained hunter-gatherers ever since. The way they live on this dry landscape can teach us a lot about how our own ancestors survived the ever-shifting climates of our original African homelands.
The Khoisan, or Bushmen, are the most ancient genetic lineage we know of. To this day, Bushmen live as hunter-gatherers in a world almost without water. No rain falls for 9 months a year. Sometimes the rains simply never come. And yet, here they are, With Bushmen, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
This is a comifera tree, and what we're doing is digging at the roots for the larvae of the beetle that feeds on it. Because this is a poisonous tree, the poison accumulates in the larvae, and so if you can get at the larvae before they hatch and extract what's inside them, it's very potent for hunting tips.
We've been here about 4 hours. We've dug there, and we're still not finding any of these live larvae that hold the poison.
Some things take a big effort in the Kalahari, and some don't. This is a Kalahari water tuber. No matter where humans live, we all share a voracious appetite for water. Human kidneys are designed to flush 2 liters of water a day. Not surprisingly, Bushmen are pretty good at solving the water puzzle. The Kalahari elephant can smell groundwater. Where the elephants dig for a drink, the Bushmen dig a sip well that can last through the dry season. An ostrich eggshell is a perfect container. Bushmen today give us a window on our African past. Then, as now, water was life. Surviving in a world without water is proof of a special mind. Intelligence like this evolved to define the human species. But when did that story begin? What triggered the evolution of the mind? This is Africa's Great Rift Valley, the birthplace of humanity. It's here our species first emerged.
By 200,000 years ago, human beings who look just like us are living all through East Africa. Our ancestors are buried in the sediment all around me, in the walls of Africa's Great Rift Valley. But to say that is the beginning of our own story, the story of modern humans, is somehow unsatisfying. The thing is, you can't say very much about what goes on inside the brain from a fossilized human skull. Where and why did the modern human mind emerge? Now that is a question we'd all love to answer.
I've come to meet archaeologist Rick Potts. He believes these valley walls carry a clue to the mystery of the evolution of human intelligence.
The original idea was that I was going to come here to study what was the actual ancestral habitat that was the fuel for our ancestors being able to evolve. And what that did, it totally changed my mind about human evolution.
As we walk down the valley wall, we're traveling back in time. Each layer marks a new climate phase.
The lake in this area began a little bit over 1 million years before the present.
Before we were humans.
Before we were humans, before we were us. And look at the environment today. It's dry and dusty. There's no evidence of water at all. But you see the brown layer right here, right below us.
Yeah, right in here.
The lake disappeared. There was a grassland environment, a soil that stretched out as far as the eye can see.
Then you found this.
But then we found this, and this gray layer is a volcanic eruption. But after the volcanic eruption, what we see as we go back through here and up through time is white.
Yeah, that's very chalky.
Well, that's the an area where the lake came back. But then the lake stayed around for just a little bit before there was a drought. And this hard white line right here is about a 1,000-year drought.
From right here, I can see successive landscapes that were either really good or really bad for our ancestors.
Right.
It was always changing. You had this beautiful, pure lake, and then an environment we could not possibly have survived.
That's right. This is the exact place, in fact, the exact moment when I thought about volatility, the instability of the environment being the driver of human evolutionary history right here.
So if Potts is right, there never was any such thing as an unchanging African savanna. But these valley walls only reveal so much. What was it like to be a human in this volatile world? Scientists have discovered a new way to read Africa's ancient climates. It's recorded in sediment cores from the ocean floor around Africa. At the world's biggest collection, Columbia University scientist Peter Domenical is reading the signals.
As you can see, we have really a pretty immense collection of deep-sea sediment cores.
Yeah.
Actually, we have cores in this collection that are over 100 million years old. This actually is a core that's labeled V19195. That means it was the 19th cruise of our ship, the Vima. And so here you can see pretty clearly, this is a very white sediment. Now, this is not what we see off the coast of Africa.
Oh, it's much redder.
And you can see it's just a very different kind of core. This is the dust that's being blown off of Africa into the adjacent oceans.
How much time are we looking at here?
This would be equivalent to about 5,000 years. Essentially, 1,000 years of accumulation is 10 centimeters, and so it's very slow. I mean, if you think of that, that's, 1,000 years is...
But what secrets are trapped in these sediments?
Rather than looking at visible fossils, we're looking at these molecular fossils that are preserved in the ocean sediments. In this liquid is a concentration of compounds that come from plants that lived millions of years ago. If they're growing in very dry environments, this will tell us that. And so we can go back millions of years and tell this story.
The kinds of changes that you're seeing in the record, did they surprise you? The depth of the change or the suddenness of the change?
One thing that we discovered was that this idea that early hominins stepped out of the rainforest onto the savanna and moved on nobly into their future, that's garbage. If anything, what we're seeing is evidence for really rapid and large changes in climate that are relevant on human timescales.
What Domenical has discovered is that in our African home, change was constant, and the changes were fast, like a light switching on and off, from wet to dry and back again. The fertile lands our ancestors were born into could become the desert wasteland where they died. I can't understand why we weren't driven to extinction.
Only Homo sapiens were able to migrate in and colonize the world's most difficult terrain. There's clearly an ability to adapt immediately. We have this ability for humans to untether themselves from the rivers by potentially using these ostrich eggshell flasks. You could even, like a Hansel and Gretel, be leaving yourself a pathway of stored water. Then who knows how far you could travel. I think this is one of the most remarkable hallmarks of our amazing brains, is that we can easily come up with innovations to move into these extreme environments.
Resilience, inventiveness. As these qualities evolved, did the change leave a fossil record?
This was our tool, or the tool of our pre-human ancestors for, what was it, 1 million years?
Yeah, over 1 million years. This was
tool,
the
again
technology,
and again.
yeah, which is almost hard to conceive of in the present, where every few years technology changes. You want to be up to date on your cell phone and other sorts of technologies, and this was made over and over again for a long time. And then all of a sudden, over about 100,000 years, you have these go away, replaced by small projectiles and a much more diversified toolkit. And that's the beginning of human innovation.
So I wonder, if we were thinking differently, was our brain changing shape?
What we're looking at here is the difference between a fossil Homo sapiens skull and a fossil ancestor. The brain was probably the size of an orange, a smaller brain size than what we had in fossil Homo sapiens.
Can we say anything about brain function from this enlarged frontal area of the brain? I mean, this is the part of our brain that's responsible for abstract thought.
The front part of the brain involves abstraction, the ability to hold attention for very long periods of time. And so it's very much thought that Homo sapiens, through the reorganization of its brain, had this ability to imagine that was truly unique, not only in our evolutionary history, but in the history of life on Earth. So could it be that the behavior, the ability to adjust to environmental change was one of the major driving factors between this ancestor and this descendant?
Our growing brain may have saved our species, but it came at a cost.
At rest, our brains take about 20% of our oxygen and of our metabolism, but they weigh only 2% of our body. That's not a good deal for most organs, but what are our brains good for? Well, they are our organ of plasticity, of being able to learn, to be able to adjust behavior in a world that is not stable. That is the great currency of our evolutionary history, the ability to adapt, to adjust, to be flexible.
With Homo sapiens, a mind had evolved that could outwit the twists and turns of the African climate. It was the evolution of adaptability. But a time was coming, not even the smartest could survive. By 200,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had just emerged.
But then, like so many times before, a climate disaster. This happened.
On planet Earth, a new ice age had begun. The effect on our African home was dramatic. A mega drought gripped the continent. In places, it would last for 30,000 years. Our ancestors had survived climate change before, but this was different. A kind of perfect storm on a planetary scale. This turn for the worse would carve its mark in our very DNA. A mark scientists refer to as a bottleneck.
The whole matter of an evolutionary bottleneck has been a very, very attractive idea, a population crash. And there are some estimates that the number of breeding individuals, of breeding adults, may have been as small as 600. But any way you cut it, we were essentially an endangered species.
As drought took its toll, the flame of humanity flickered dangerously low. It was the end of the human journey. For all but a handful. There was still one place in Africa good for life. Its very edge. It was here our ancestors found a place to rebuild. Until recently, no one believed the sea had anything to do with the story of early humans. Not anymore. In caves along South Africa's coast, archaeologist Curtis Moraine has discovered an incredibly rich record of human life. And it begins just when the human species hovered on the brink of extinction.
Prior to the bottleneck, we had a large population. The population gets fragmented into refugia, and then one population survives and the others go extinct. There's debate over how severe the bottleneck was. Some people think it was a couple hundred people. Some people would argue that it would be a couple thousand people.
You're saying that it's possible that the 7 billion people who live on the planet today could be descended from 100 breeding individuals?
Right. So to give you an idea, if you take a genetic sample from 100 people from all the major ethno-linguistic groups around the world, the diversity is less than what you see among chimpanzees. We have to explain that.
What happened to us when everything dried up?
During a glacial, the Sahara is twice as big as it is today. So that gives you an idea of how much land mass is lost. I thought that coastal life would be a refuge for humans during a glacial, primarily because the sea is still productive. So you have the plants, the animals, and the seafood. And those three things together make for the ideal conditions for the refuge.
We can look down at the bottom there and see deep into the past. What is that, 90,000 years ago?
So at the very bottom of this occupation, there's a dune that dates to 90,000 years ago. And at the very top of the occupation, there's an ancient soil that dates to 50,000 years ago. So this is a place that's very attractive to people, which is why we have 14 vertical meters of sediment, which is an astonishing record of human occupation.
51. At Pinnacle Point, Moraine is charting the evolution of human behavior at a critical time, a time when most humans had died away. It was behavior that suddenly became more sophisticated. The clue, a new kind of blade made by heat-treating stone called silkrete. Just inland, Canadian archaeologist Jane Wilkins is working on the silkrete mystery.
Here we have silkrete, which is not heat-treated. We collect it locally. You can see it's beige in color usually. It's really rough.
You wouldn't get much of a blade out of this.
No, it'd be difficult. So we've buried 4 nodules of this silkrete, so the temperature ramps up very slowly. It needs to get to almost 300 degrees to transform into good quality. It's a trial and error process for us. We make a lot of mistakes. I think the most important thing we're finding is it needs to happen slowly.
What happens if I just throw this on the surface?
It will just explode.
And you won't get the blades you need?
No.
Okay. You really have a new technology that's useful, don't you? You can make a blade that can go into something you can throw or you can shoot with a bow and arrow?
Right. You're making really small, long-distance projectile that you can target dangerous prey from really far away.
That's like the Stone Age equivalent of discovering dynamite. It's a huge change, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Deeper, too.
Okay, all right.
And hard. Deeper, like way up there, like at the top of the 3. Wow.
Well, I'm creating a lot of flakes. These are microliths, aren't they? Doesn't that count as a microlith?
They are small.
Yeah, yeah. And they're all sharp. They're all sharp.
Humans were doing something we had never done before. We were using heat to forge our first weapons. For Moraine, the complexity of that process is crucial.
The whole thing is a long recipe that's complex. And how do we pass on recipes? Language, instruction. And so if you don't have language and instruction and the ability to hold a number of data bits in your mind, then you can't put those complex technologies together. A human operating with true projectiles, they can dominate the planet.
Who were these people who mastered the art of the heat-treated blade and kept the secret alive? They were inventors, masters of technology, a new kind of hunter-gatherer. This way of life has all but disappeared, almost. The Bushmen I visited in Namibia's remote north are some of the last nomadic hunter-gatherers on Earth. They live in the present, but they also offer us a glimpse of our own past. A past when cooperation was all that stood between us and extinction. I need to see it for myself. So I'm leaving the coast and going back to the Kalahari. The rains are beginning. It's a time when my Bushman friends travel far from their village to hunt. This time, we actually have to search the Kalahari from the air. Hello. Oh, we're really glad to be here. The weather made us a bit nervous. Thank you.
Jonas and Josef are going on a hunt, and I'm going to go with them. But a hunt can last a long time. It could be overnight. And the film crew can't go out there. So I'm going to go with them with this little camera and try to record what happens. I don't speak the language. I don't know what to expect. I'm just going to follow them and observe what happens and hope for the best.
To me, the vast Kalahari is an unsolvable puzzle. It seems endless, without landmarks. But for these remarkable hunters, this land is full of opportunity.
We've been walking for only an hour now, and what I notice is that they're always looking down. They're not scanning the horizon to see the animals. They're looking for their tracks in the sand. It's like they're reading a book.
I thought we were hunting for animals, but instead, we're eating honey?
These are honey, these are beans. Okay.
Even digging for roots is worth the effort.
Oh, good.
But still, no animals.
The rains have started, and that's a problem because now that there's water on the landscape, the animals are dispersing out from the water holes, walking all day, and we haven't found a single fresh track.
Night is coming. We have no food. So we've dug some nuts out of elephant droppings.
We'll be up at first light tomorrow, and hopefully we'll see some fresh tracks. That's the hunter's best chance of making a kill.
Jonas has found a spring hare. They've hooked it through its den using their long hooked stick, and now they have to dig it out where it is. They think they can hear the spring hare struggling underneath the sand. Two days of hunting for this. Not exactly a success. But while we've been gone, the women have been gathering another kind of protein, mangedi nuts. Bushmen could never survive on hunting alone, but neither would gathering be enough. As they say, it takes a village. Today, the world's last hunter-gatherers live on its most forbidding lands. Their way of life is an intricate dance, a dance that knits them together, each woman, man, child, bringing something to the common pot. The seeds of a social human have taken root. As our ancestors evolved the tools of cooperation, the age of modern humans was dawning. But ahead lay a final milestone: the invention of art. Once, this was Bushman land. Humans have lived here since our earliest days.
If this is where we began to think like modern humans, it's no coincidence that this is also the richest place in the world for rock art. In fact, Southern Africa has a quarter of the world's rock art sites, 3,000 in these mountains alone, and some is right up there.
Nomads once hunted along canyons like this. And in a way, they left their people's history on these rocks.
As far as we know, the very moment we become modern humans, we become artists. Art making is the signature of our species. But why? Wouldn't drawing on a wall have been a distraction from the very serious business of hunting and gathering? Well, when you look at the extraordinary richness of art on all of these walls, it played a role. This is clearly a group. These male figures with the big calves are hunters. But this figure, this red figure in the middle, fascinates me the most because this, we think, is a shaman. Now, why draw a shaman on this wall? What is the point of that? Well, shamans are a way of taking you into the mind of the animals around you, into the animal world. And that's a way of understanding your prey. It's a way of hunting better. And so shamans were actually very important parts of the hunting and gathering process. There's so much here that we just don't understand. But the fact that it's symbols that are beyond us is actually really important. Come see this over here. Right here is a group of lines. It's almost like a written language. Who knows what it means? The point is, it meant something to the people who drew it here. And that's just it. They had a way of taking information and storing it on a wall for future generations. That is the very essence of language. That's the value of symbols. And that was a very important moment for our species when we could begin to communicate with symbolic language.
One of the things that being a symbolic animal does is that it allows us to refer to the past, think about the present and what's going on, and to imagine what the future may be and how we may act to ensure our own survival. But what this also does, it allows us to understand who we are and what the possibilities of being human may lead to.
The dawn of symbolic thought. I'm fascinated by this because it means we were learning to speak. So where did language begin? I'm on my way to a place called Blombos, another cave on South Africa's coast. What archaeologists are discovering there is so remarkable. They're now calling this coastline the cradle of the human mind. The deposits at Blombos Cave are incredibly rich. The excavation is painstaking. Every centimeter of sand holds the debris of countless human lives. The dates here are astonishing. We thought this kind of behavior emerged much later.
We have another plot. This is an occupation place, so they were living here. It would have been home to these people. So I think this is a period that Homo sapiens somehow became different. People become inventive. They certainly understand elementary chemistry. We know that from the toolkits we have. down below here. We have engraved ochre from the site. Writing's perhaps not quite the right description, but it's certainly a symbol that meant something. So it would have been an early form of communication, or if you want to call it writing. That is a breakthrough. That does not happen at earlier stages.
Do you think that the people in this cave were speaking to each other 75,000 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people were talking to each other on a regular basis. How did they transmit all this knowledge about the environment, you know, about which plants you can eat, about which fish is poisonous? They could certainly plan for the future. I don't think they just arbitrarily went down hunting or to the seashore. They spoke about it to one another. If you're running across the landscape trying to hunt all the time to get enough food to survive, there's not a lot of talking time. But if you look around you here, look at the hearths. These are fireplaces built, probably kept going all day and all night because they don't have to work very hard to get their food. There's enough food for all of them for a day, for 2 days maybe even, to sit down and chat. They didn't sit around the fires and look out at sea and not speak to each other. They were talking to each other.
Once we could speak, we could bring the past to life in words and drawings. But we could also imagine our own future and our death. Perhaps that's why the dawn of language is also the dawn of something much more complex: art. Ochre was our earliest paint, a mineral we mined in the rocks.
You can look at the vast amounts of ochre in here that's been worked to produce powder. We're talking about people using a toolkit here to make a pigmented compound, a paint essentially, using quite complex chemistry, certainly complex for 100,000 years ago. For what? They didn't eat it, I don't think. They didn't, hunt lions with it. They were probably painting their bodies with it. To give you an example of the shell beads we find here, they made little holes in them, they put them around their neck, and they put ochre on them, and they changed the colors of them. So these beads and these ochres were an important part of life, and they're telling you that the human mind was not just concentrating on getting down and trying to find some food every day, that the human mind was at a state almost as advanced as we are today. But I think there's not a lot of doubt that by 100,000 years ago, people were pretty advanced.
At places like Blombo's cave, something remarkable happened in the life of the mind. We had taken the final step. The modern mind was in place. But what triggered this revolution in intelligence? Some scientists are beginning to think it was no accident that the modern mind evolved when we found the sea.
If there was evolutionary pressure on communities of archaic humans to get better at thinking, what would be the least available necessity? Now, you need a lot of things to build bigger brains, but the critical nutrient seems to be these long-chain polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are in the marine food chain. I started to look at the archaeological record and wonder about the connection between increased intake of those long-chain fatty acids and the consequent appearance of manifestations in the archaeological record which are very innovative. So this coincidence started to strike me as being very significant. Rather than thinking of it that when we got smart, we noticed that there were all these shellfish lying around, and so we started to eat them. Well, maybe it was the other way around, maybe it was our regular consumption of all those shellfish that provided the nutrients for the brain to become better wired.
You're really looking at a land of plenty, and coincidentally, you're looking at an ocean that's producing the right foods for brain development. So we need to look at a scenario that people were, in fact, not afraid of the ocean. You would start off with probably the near shore, but over time, we can see that they're also going for deep water species, like abalone. Abalone are not easy to find unless the water is really, really low. So the possibility is that people could go into the water, they could dive, but you need to go under the water to get those shellfish. And I think that is part of the key development of early human brains and part of why they became modern and why we're still here today.
Is it possible? Did we harvest our food beneath the waves? The waters along South Africa's coasts are full of life. But the sea is treacherous and cold. I'm just not sure the risk was worth the reward. I need to try diving for food myself. Biologist Craig Foster has been diving in these cold and shark-infested waters since he was a boy. This is a forest of kelp. It's amazingly productive. It doesn't take long to gather all we can eat.
Wow, that's a real oyster. I can taste it.
We went into a kelp forest now. I mean, you saw how much life is in there now and how much food is in there. In the early days, it would have been 100 times that. I mean, you can imagine a small group of 20 people living in a cave right here.
Yeah.
Okay? And every day they go down, and within a short period of time, that little area of the intertidal zone will be depleted. But just beyond that is enormous amounts of food. They would have seen that in the clear water and gone in a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. Don't tell me after 5,000 years they wouldn't be swimming.
Living on the coast, early humans were staring out at a vast storehouse of underwater food. But could we open that door? We evolved on dry land. Could our bodies really adapt to a diving way of life? The answer may lie with a remarkable people living very far away. This is Tawi-Tawi, a scattering of islands in the southern Philippines. It's always been a place apart. For over a century, Tawi-Tawi has been at war, fighting for independence. Islamist fighters now raise money by kidnapping. When fighting broke out, our film crew had to turn back. But 4 months later, there's a fragile peace. We're trying again. And our protectors never let us out of sight. The Philippine Marines are the only outsiders here. This dangerous journey is worth the risk, because hidden behind the curtain of conflict are the world's last traditional divers, the Bajau. Once, diving was a way of life for coastal peoples around the planet. Not anymore. Only here, living off tiny coral islands in a war zone, the Bajau still dive as they always have. they can teach us a lot about the human ability to adapt to life, not just on the sea, but in it as well. When a Bajau child is born, it's plunged into the sea before it takes its first breath. This is Santarawi, one of the last of the great Bajau divers. As a young man, he could hunt underwater for 5 minutes at a stretch. Now, at 63, he's passing the skill to his sons, Bruce Lee and Ram Lee. I'm the first Westerner Santarawi has ever met, but I'm the one who's nervous. I've come here with the hope he'll take me into the sea.
Naomi.
Mapagtuhon. Bang niya kasusahan no talaw kamarem tahik. Ako bahala sabay kau maya maapo. Panduan ta kamarem tahik.
Good.
Tawi Tawi isn't safe, but still, I came because this is the only place I can witness an amazing natural ability. It's an ability very few people are even aware of, but that we all share. It's called breath hold diving, and the Bajau are masters.
There are populations still living from self-sustained harvesting and fishing underwater, and their main aim is to spend as long time as possible per day on the seafloor. And they can spend up to 60% of the working time underwater. In the most extreme case, we have seen people spend 5 hours a day underwater.
I've been training a long time for this day. I'm going to try to follow Santarawi and his sons down to a reef about 25 meters below.
Aniya makatawa kami libaran kami. Assalamualaikum. Tawagan na.
Holding a breath for minutes isn't the only challenge. 25 meters is a long swim down, and the pressure is intense. This deep, a body no longer floats. The hunters can walk through the corals. I reach my limit, but after 2 minutes, Santarawi is still on the bottom. This extraordinary control seems superhuman, but it isn't.
People have been diving to 100 meters on one breath, and remember they have to swim back up to the surface again. Very, very few terrestrial animals, I think probably none, could do that. have a diving response that is conserving oxygen for the brain and the heart, the organs that need a constant oxygen supply. And this is a response that is typical of seals. When I started studying the Indonesian population of freedivers, I thought they were adapted to diving. But when I have studied Swedish freedivers, I have seen that they developed the same kind of mechanisms in the body and the same skills within a year. It's difficult to understand why we are so good divers if we were not forced by evolution to learn this.
In our past, we hunted on the land, but the Bajau show us we could also become hunters on the sea floor. Breath-hold diving originates deep in our past, and I know it evolved for a reason. Diving unlocked the riches of the sea. That harvest may have fed the final evolution of intelligence. We are children of a changing planet, forged in Africa, but also driven to the brink of extinction. Only a handful of survivors learned to outsmart the shifting climate. The next chapter in the human journey was no less miraculous. We raced out of Africa and settled every corner of the planet. How we did it is a story of survival and ingenuity we're only now beginning to understand.